So now, let's take a close look at who suppressed ivermectin. The corporate Democrats. The Senate hearing on the early treatment of COVID was chaired by a Republican, Ron Johnson. The only Democrat to attend the meeting was Senator Gary Peters of Michigan. He delivered a brief statement condemning the entire meeting and then walked out. Here's Senator Peters' statement.
We owe it to the American people to get this right. And sadly, today's hearing will not provide accurate scientific information or advance any useful efforts to slow the spread of the coronavirus pandemic.
Now let's be frank. Big Pharma is undiscerning about their political partners. They're equally happy to work with Republicans and Democrats. But in this election cycle, they were clearly behind the Democrats, which is not surprising, given how hard senators like Democrat Gary Peters were working for them. Here are their congressional campaign contributions in 2020. And in the presidential race, the difference was even more stark. They contributed $7.4 million to Joe Biden's campaign and only $2.1 million to Donald Trump's. Perhaps this is because early in the pandemic, Donald Trump had shown some interest in repurposing cheap existing drugs to fight COVID. Now it has to be said that the corporate Democrats' suppression of ivermectin is particularly ironic, because COVID-19 disproportionately affects minorities, and the Democrats went out of their way in 2020 to style themselves as champions of minorities. Dr. Corey worked to save many minorities suffering from COVID-19. Here's what he had to say.
You know who's dying here? It's our African American and Latino and elderly. It's some of the most disadvantaged and impoverished members of our society. They are dying at higher rates than anyone else. It's the most severe discrepancy I've seen in my medical career.
And yet the corporate Democrats and their mainstream media and big tech allies did everything in their power to suppress the knowledge of a drug that could potentially have brought the COVID-19 pandemic to an end in the summer of 2020. They continually exhorted us to follow the science, and yet they did everything in their power to hide that science. What we really need to do is follow the money, and in doing so, we will understand why big tech, the mainstream media, and the corporate Democrats were not working for the American people. We're not working for the minorities they claim to champion, but rather we're working to enrich a very small group of elite and already obscenely wealthy Americans.